we may find ourselves in a position where it's too late. So if you cognitively can't understand what you're signing anymore, you can't sign an advance directive.
Welcome back to the Better Together podcast. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our discussion on planning ahead with Lorie Mount. Could we debunk some of the misunderstandings, I think, between various documents? What do you often hear?
The most common that we hear is, I need to have a trust or I'll lose all of my assets.
Yes.
So a trust functions a lot like a will. It's a document that's going to determine what happens to your assets when you pass away.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of different kinds of trusts. They all serve different functions, but most trusts that we see are what we call a revocable living trust. And it is just a different route for getting your assets to the people that you want to have them. When you have a last will and testament, for example, when you pass away, that is a probate estate settlement. When you have a trust agreement and you've owned your assets inside of a trust and you pass away, we have a trust settlement. There are certainly some states where I would tell you you should avoid probate at all costs because it's an expensive process in some states to go through.
Does it take longer, probably?
Yes, it can be a cumbersome process in other states. Indiana, we're very fortunate. We have what's referred to as unsupervised estate administration, which means probate is simply a filing with the county. We're not going to court hearings for anything when you pass away.
So if there's real estate and all these other complex things,
That's correct. We're always going to need some mechanism for getting real estate, for example, to wherever it's supposed to go next. It's never going to magically fall in someone's lap, but we can pick and choose whether we think a will or a trust or what's referred to as a transfer on death deed works best for transferring those assets. And I would say it's fact sensitive, depending on your situation, who you want inheriting, how many people are inheriting. A lot of times that's what drives which document works best for you.
What if I'm living and I also know that I'm going to need, extensive care, maybe be in a facility, need more than my family could provide, and I'm worried that's the case, that all of my assets will dwindle down and I won't be able to leave a gift. How does that work?
Yes, it's such a fear that people have. And I can understand we've all worked hard for the things that we have, and the thought of losing it all if we get sick or need care later in life is scary. That's the great place to refer to an elder law attorney. Elder law attorneys are well versed in public benefits. What can we do to protect assets, and what can we not do that would get us into trouble in our time of need? So there is a big misconception that if you need long-term care, you're going to lose all of your assets. That is not true if it's handled correctly. There's also a big misconception that if you just put your assets into a revocable trust, they are protected.
Oh, okay.
That is also not true. If a trust is revocable, if you have a document that says this is still mine, I can do whatever I want with it, we refer to that as a look-through trust. I can look right through that and see that it's still yours. So it's not harming us, but it's not helping protect those assets when it comes to long-term care.
I see. So they can still get those assets too.
Yes, they would still be considered a resource. Now, there are certainly ways to protect those resources. A married couple, for example, when it comes to long-term care, most of our seniors or all of our seniors over 65 have Medicare benefits. Those cover the costs of rehab in most situations. So if you get sick and go to the hospital, you transfer to a nursing home for a short-term stay, that's not where the financial concern lies. The financial problem happens when Medicare turns off that faucet and we don't have any more rehab days, but we need to stay in the nursing home long term. So we are then turning to the Medicaid system. People hear the word Medicaid and they think I have to be impoverished. I have to give away or spend all of my assets. But in fact, the rules for the nursing home category of benefits in Medicaid are very different than other categories. There are very high income limits. And in fact, if you are over the income cap, there's a fix for that. And in the case of a married couple, there's generally a way to protect almost all of the assets. And that's by design. We don't want a spouse who's still at home to be left impoverished because they have a loved one in care.
That's wonderful. And that's comforting. Wonderful. How, what do you find are the most common challenges or issues when you see families don't have any of these legal documents in place and there's a medical crisis?
Waiting until there's a crisis creates a lot of problems. Timing becomes one of the big ones. So we were just talking about long-term care. In my example, let's assume a wife goes to the nursing home, husband comes in and says, what do I do? My wife needs long-term nursing home care. If she never signed directives, especially a financial power of attorney, and she's now unable to sign her name to do things like transfer some of her assets to her husband, we are stuck in how quickly we can act to help that family protect their assets, because we might have to pursue a guardianship through a court before we can even access her account.
There's an extra step in timing. Oh, so good. I'm so glad you're here helping us. I'm curious, when someone is caring for or supporting a loved one and they have a serious illness, what planning steps should they consider first or next?
If they don't already have healthcare directives, such as advance directives in place, that's something they should be doing first. Because the risk is, if we lose capacity as an illness gets worse over time or progresses, we may find ourselves in a position where it's too late. So if you cognitively can't understand what you're signing anymore, you can't sign an advance directive legally. Or physically, you get to the point that you are not able to physically sign documents. We want to get those things in place before we get to that point, certainly. Obviously, the estate planning piece with wills and trusts are important, but I tend to worry a lot more about the person and what's going to happen to that person than their assets after they're gone. So I would almost think that becomes the back burner if they haven't done those things in advance.
If we were ordering those things,
Yes.
yeah. Is there a story you can share with us, maybe when this process of planning went really well? It was a blessing to the family, and also maybe a time where folks didn't have it in place and what that looked like.
Sure. I can think of a specific example of a woman who was diagnosed with a terminal condition. And when she came to me and I met with her, she was, instead of focusing on what she was losing, she was focusing on making this the best situation she could for her family members. So we had very open discussions about what she wanted to accomplish and who she wanted in charge. We did that plenty early enough that she was able to feel some level of peace as she moved forward through the progression of her illness. We had the right support in place. We made sure someone was paying her bills so that she didn't fall behind. She didn't have financial worries anymore because we made sure that was
reduces anxiety. Yeah,
it does.
So good.
And when she passed away, I think her family members were grateful that the plans she put in place saved them some efforts after the fact. They were able to also focus on her life and her legacy and not have a messy situation to clean up after the fact.
And be grieving in their role. When they have to make the call, sometimes there's, other additional guilt or worry or, relational things that happen. And so they just, to have that peace in the family is a beautiful thing.
Sometimes people can get really excited about thinking about the difference they could make when they pass away. That's a fun part of estate planning. You mentioned earlier, do you have to leave everything to your children? The answer is no, but even sometimes we have clients that don't have children. And thinking about where they could leave their assets or how they could do that in a way that would really leave a legacy after they're gone can be a heartwarming and fun thing to do to help somebody through. A great example would be a client who didn't have children. She had lots of family members that she wanted to leave gifts to, but she was also able to create a donor advised fund. So it's a sum of money that would be used for charity, for several different charities. And every year those family members, after she's gone, would be responsible for deciding which charities receive a gift each year.
Nice.
So that was a way to leave a gift that would carry on for years to come. So those projects are always my favorites to work on.
That's exciting, yeah. Well, Lorie, this has been really rich, and I feel like we're going to need another episode to unpack some more. But I'm wondering, for the listeners who know they need to take action but maybe feel overwhelmed about what to do, or what would be one simple or next step that folks could take, just to get started?
I would say start the conversation. And a way to do that, if you schedule an appointment for estate planning, for example, with our office, you would meet with one of us, and we just try to have a very relaxed, open conversation about what you want to accomplish and who's important in your lives. I'm going to ask a lot of questions about your kiddos or your other family members and what they do and where they're at. So we can really talk through what's going to work best for you. So at least you have some idea, even if you haven't executed anything yet, on what your options are and what would work best for you. Obviously, the follow-up is important, but that's a great first step.
This is Better Together, a podcast dedicated to making every moment count. Thank you for listening. Please like us and share on your social media channels. If you have a question or would like to learn more about a specific topic, you can find us at ourhospice.org or call 812-314-8083. Until next time, remember, life is short. We are better together, making every moment count.